Recording in progress.
Hereby call to order the Roseville Economic Development Authority meeting for Monday, September 18th, 2023. Mr. Executive Director, would you call the roll, please?
Commission Member Gruff.
Here.
Commission Member Strawn.
Here.
Commission Member Schroeder.
Here.
Commission Member Etten.
Here online.
President Rowe.
Here. And I think we're actually authority members. I'm not sure we're commissioners.
I'm sorry,
but,
yes.
We'll still count that roll call. So we have also with us this evening for the EDA meeting our EDA/City Attorney stand-in Peter McHale, and we welcome him this evening. Thank you for being here. We also have City Manager Pat Trudgeon on the other end of the table, who is also our Executive Director for the EDA. We have very little on our agenda this evening, so we'll move right along. I should remind folks, if you have a cell phone, to silence it or otherwise assure that it doesn't disrupt the meeting this evening. And with that, we'll ask folks to stand if you're able for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, next on our agenda is approval of tonight's agenda. Are there any changes that need to be made to the EDA agenda this evening to that one item?
No, there's not.
Doesn't appear to be the case. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Member Strawn, second by Member Schroeder. And I would note that we do have to do a roll call because we have one participant remote this evening. So, Mr. Trudgeon, would you call the roll, please?
Member Gruff.
Aye.
Member Strawn.
Aye.
Member Schroeder.
Here.
Member Etten.
Aye.
President Rowe.
Aye. That motion passes unanimously. We have our agenda for this evening. That then brings us to the, well, I should note we do have public comment listed. We do normally take up public comment on a general nature during our council meeting, which will immediately follow the EDA meeting, so we'll move right on then to our business items. And once again, we've got the one business item, which is to consider approving a preliminary budget and a resolution related to our tax levy, recommending that to the City Council for council adoption by the end of this month. We've got our Community Development Director, Janice Gunlock, here with us this evening to introduce, or bring back, I should say, probably for further consideration, the budget and levy for the EDA for 2024. Ms. Gunlock.
Thank you, President Rowe, members of the board. As you know, every year the EDA must review and recommend a preliminary budget and levy to the City Council. We did provide that preliminary budget and levy in July. Since that meeting, we fielded a few questions. We also provided some budget actuals for 2022 and year-to-date 2023 in your packet. That additional information has not resulted in any changes to the budget in terms of what was presented to you in July. Staff does continue to propose a small decrease to the budget and levy for 2024. We're reducing both by $33,270. That does bring the proposed preliminary levy down to $378,235. That's a decrease of 8% compared to this year's budget. I just want to go through 5 things that comprise that change in the budget and levy amount. Some small increases. The first one is $6,240 for salaries and benefits. There are 1.5 staff that are funded by the EDA. We have also increased the EDA's ownership rehab program budget by about $7,500. You'll recall last year when we created all of those new rehab programs in an effort to try and keep the revolving loan fund healthy, so we didn't have to levy funds for that account. We moved some one-time loan origination costs off of that revolving loan fund and onto the EDA levy, so that's why you'll see the $7,500 increase there. We've also increased the EDA's funding for the back page of the city newsletter. It's a small amount, but it's $1,000. We also have just shy of $2,000 on some software and technology costs by the EDA. And then, of course, the big one is we've opted to not put the $50,000 aside for the small business loan fund for 2024. We do have a healthy balance in that fund right now. We think we have enough in there to fund at least 3, if not 4, maximum loan amounts of $50,000. And That is a little bit of a change since we presented the budget to you in July, because we have officially done our first small business loan with Par 365. That was a $25,000 loan. So again, the net result of these changes is a decrease of $33,270. The resolution in your packet is what would need to be adopted tonight if you wish to move forward with that. And with that, I'll try and answer any questions you might have.
All right, thank you, Ms. Gunlock. Are there questions from the EDA board for staff on the proposed budget and levy for 2024 for the EDA? Questions from the EDA? Member Strong?
I just have one question, and it's not about the budget. I appreciate the budget and what you offer, and I'm thankful we still have so many great programs. I was talking with a small business owner who said he had not heard of any of these items and had been working with the city for a number of months on a few different items. So I'm just wondering, I'm wanting to make sure that small businesses hear about all of these programs. I know I've seen a lot of information about the Forgivable Grant program, but I haven't seen as many things about that $50,000 loan program and things like that. So I'm wondering how smaller businesses find out about those things.
So, Board Member Strong, the main avenues we use to promote those programs is Grow Roseville. So if that business owner is not signed up to receive our email alerts through Grow Roseville, send them to me and I'll certainly get them signed up. We also promote that stuff on the back page of the city newsletter, and I know that newsletter is primarily read by our residential property owners, but our commercial property owners receive it as well. So I would encourage them to pay attention to the back page of that newsletter. And then at least once a year, if not twice a year, we do promote these programs through the Roseville Business Council. So again, if that business owner does not participate in that, I would encourage them to do so. And then, of course, the Grow Roseville website also has that information, including the application. And so send them to me. I'm happy to direct them appropriately. And I would take this opportunity to say we've gotten 5 businesses applying for the forgivable microloan. So that has proven to be successful, at least in the preliminary stages. So we're getting the word out on that as well.
Thank you.
And is it fair to say, too, that if somebody is working with the city and it doesn't appear that particular programs might be a benefit to that person, they may not hear about them from the people they're working with at the city, too, because it just doesn't seem to be a match or something like that, if there happens to be those types of connections going on?
It could be, you're right, yep. And, you know, we also work with Open to Business through Ramsey County, and that business owner could speak with that individual as well. So if there isn't a good city program that fits their needs, there might be a good county program. And of course, Open to Business also makes loans to business owners as well, so.
Thank you.
All right, other questions? Member Strong, or excuse me, Member Schroeder.
Thank you for presenting this, and thank you for answering all my questions today when we chatted. I do like this format, and I like it that we show last year's and this year and then the budget, so this is a nice format to have. The only thing I wanted to make sure and mention is that the EDA does have a fund balance brought forward each year, so there is $464,000 that's brought over from, I believe it's through August, right now? And so my point being is, we do have a cushion to, in case we needed it for anything that comes up. So there is that cushion as well. So thank you for providing that information.
And to clarify, is all of that fund balance essentially unrestricted in terms of the 400-some thousand, or, because I know sometimes we have fund balances that have come from community development block grants or other programs and things like that, which we can't just sort of use for general purposes. So I'd appreciate some clarification on that.
Sure, the 460 some odd number I gave Board Member Schroeder, that is the levy fund. There's not restrictions on what the EDA could spend that money on. Those balances we keep separate. I would take this opportunity to note, you'll see we do budget $5,000 every year for, I think we note it as printing marketing materials. We've used that historically to fund a housing study. In the last few years, we've talked about when is the right time to do that study. And so some of that money that we've been budgeting for the last 5 years that we haven't spent, that's in that fund balance, recognizing that when we're ready to do such a study, it's gonna cost a lot more than $50,000 or $5,000. So that's where we would be able to pull the money for that study. And we think 2024 might be a good time to talk about a study, but we can talk about that at a different meeting, maybe the next one, when we talk about the local housing trust fund.
All right. Are there other questions or comments?
Just as a
Mr. Treasurer?
follow-up too, and I think EDA members are aware of this, but we also need some fund balance for cash flow purposes, given the timing of the taxing, so it's always good to have that. So that's also part of the combination of funds.
Right, and if I remember right, our policy is a certain percentage of the operating budget, and so we, as part of our documentation, as we go through our budget process, it would be good to have that sort of re-mentioned for our benefit so that we understand where we're at with respect to that. Anything else from members? Okay. I didn't see a hand raised symbol.
There's his hand.
He's waving, really waving.
Member Etten?
Thank you, Mayor. I did raise my hand in the feature, but I don't know if you could see that. So thank you, Ms. Gunlock, for adding this detail with the actuals. I really appreciate that. I'm curious, for some of these funds, I think it would be nice to see some years before this, but some of these funds, it looks like we are budgeting far more than we're using. So I'm curious about that and would like to understand that more. Maybe that's not tonight, but maybe that's in the future. An example would be the energy efficiency program, or the some of the professional services pieces, or the economic development consultant on call. So some of those things where it jumped out, how much we're spending is well below what the budget target is.
I can certainly provide some information, and this is similar to the questions that Board Member Schroeder asked me earlier, except for the energy efficiency program. We are budgeting $12,000 for that. A lot of those could not be done during COVID, and so you'll see a theme in some of the answers to these questions. We haven't been spending the money we've budgeted in that program for several years because they couldn't go into homes during COVID. You'll see, just if you look at the budget actuals of 2022 compared to 2023, we've already spent more this year than we spent all of last year. So people are starting to do those again. Certainly we could look at decreasing that program budget if there was a desire to do that. I know with our sustainability specialists, there's been a lot more marketing push for people to conduct those energy audits, and so we've left that flat. On the economic development consultant on call, if you'll recall, going back even earlier than 2022, I think we used to have a $50,000 or $60,000 budgeted there, and so we have been incrementally decreasing that over the years. Last year we brought it down to $30,000. We raised it again this year to $40,000 because we've hired the St. Paul Area Chamber of Commerce to help us do some business retention expansion visits. The power of the chamber name gets us into more businesses, which is why we've increased that amount. We've also historically funded an economic development intern with this money fund, but the last couple of years, that intern cost was paid for by ARPA because we paid for ARPA with the Choose Roseville program. And so that's why you've seen us not spend as much money in that fund as well. And of course, the biggest reason is Ellers is our public finance consultant. We pay for a lot of what they do out of this fund, but the last 4 years, most of the work that they've done for the city has been paid for by actual projects. So projects where we're providing assistance submit an escrow, and we actually just pass those bills right through. Going back to like 2019 and earlier, a lot of Ellers costs were bore by the EDA levy, which is why we haven't completely cut that fund a little bit more. You had one more question. The training, we haven't been spending a lot of our training and conference money either, and that's a result of COVID. The trainings are starting to ramp back up this year, so we're hopeful that we can get that education piece back with our staff. Was there one other line item? I apologize. I can't recall what it was.
I also was asking about the professional services piece. Secretary and EDA attorney budgets seem to be greater. As you would note, they've gone up in 2023 so far, but we're putting a fair amount away compared to our costs so far, it looks like.
I'm glad you brought that up. The professional services related to the secretary, there was a coding issue with the EDA minutes, and so I think the city levy has covered, or I think some of the costs for the professional services for the secretary was coded incorrectly to 726. We've since fixed that, and so we'll see the professional services item get corrected as well.
Is 726 Pat's salary? Is that where that comes from?
No. It's one of our programs. I think it might
okay.
be.
Open to business.
I appreciate that. I think that a lot of what you're telling me, though, also helps with that question of can we see earlier budgets and actuals? Looks like we almost need to see 2018 and 19 to understand what was happening when things were normal, right? So we're coming back to normal. Where are we coming back to maybe? Understanding we can't know for sure, but that maybe we see how some of those costs were being borne by this budget when things were more normal.
Yeah, we can absolutely put that together. It could take some time, but yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, I feel like we have some time, but thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Right, and I would just echo on that. I think that one of the things we could look at doing for the EDA is to be a little more consistent with the documentation that we do for the rest of the city in terms of typically there's sort of a high-level summary. It shows 4 years of actuals based on the certified financial reports, and then the current year budget, and then the proposed budget. That's a pretty typical format, and that kind of follows through most of the documentation on the city side. And the EDA is a part of the city, and I think for consistency that would probably make sense to try to do that. I'm not sure, and certainly on the city side, we don't see budget versus actual for previous years, just the actuals. I don't know if the members want to see budgets versus actuals for all those years for the EDA, but once again, for consistency, at least we should try to follow the format that the rest of the city uses. And to that extent, we also have the expense categories. I think there's personnel costs, supplies, materials, professional expenses, or whatever that other one is, and then capital. And there's not a lot of EDA capital, but I think, once again, breaking things down into similar categories for the EDA as we do for the rest of the city probably makes some sense too. I think prior to this format being used for the EDA documentation was even more perhaps apocryphal. So it's nice that we got this at that time, and I think the city has sort of now kind of sped ahead a little bit in terms of the way it's documented, so we just need to try to work on consistency, I think, across the board. Mr. Trudgeon.
I might not be recalling correctly, but I thought a few years ago we tried to do that, and there was an interest to go back to this format. And we can put it whatever format people want, but if we're still going to want to see this format and another format, we're kind of duplicating efforts. So I think we should maybe have some conversation about what would be the acceptable one, because once we go to one format, we should probably stick with that.
I think what I was kind of getting at was so there's a summary, sort of a high-level, top-level summary with those broad categories and, with revenues and expenditures and the 5 years. And then the detail can be very much in this format because that gets into the very line item approach, for a lot of the things that are summarized in the summary. But I think, having that summary would be good to have for that consistency, and then the detail that makes up that summary can be very much like this, because I think this is what we've ultimately kind of come to the conclusion that works well for the EDA. And certainly I think if the finance people and the EDA people can kind of work together to fine tune some things, that can help too.
Yeah, well, we'll work on that, but I just
Sure.
wanted to bring that up. I know we've gone back and forth on this over the
Right, no, I'm not suggesting getting rid of any of the detail that's here. I'm just saying that top level summary might be nice to have, and then the 4 actual years, current budget and proposed budget, just would be consistent then. All right. So we have the request before us to adopt the resolution in the packet to recommend to ourselves, acting as the EDA, recommend to ourselves as the city council to ultimately propose this not to exceed tax levy to the county by the end of this month, essentially is what the resolution says. Is there a motion? Actually, before I do that, I'll just double check if there's anyone from the public who wishes to speak to the proposed 2024 EDA budget and tax levy? All right, doesn't appear to be the case. Then I'll turn it back to the EDA and see if there is a motion in respect to that resolution. Member Graf?
I'd like to make a motion to adopt the resolution requesting a preliminary tax levy in 2023, collectible in 2024 in the amount of $378,235.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Member Graf, second by Member Strawn. Discussion on the motion, as the maker of the motion, Member Graf?
No, I appreciate the comments, though. I think that was a good conversation, and I appreciate, of course, Ms. Gunlock being here to cover some of those issues. We had gone over this before, so it was just a review for me, but I liked the extra information.
Discussion by the seconder, Member Strawn.
Just echo what Member Groff mentioned. I think that very good discussion. I appreciate all the comments and everyone's point of view. It makes us all a little bit richer for knowing each person's specific concerns. Thank you.
All right, any additional discussion on the motion? All right, and I would just add that one of the benefits of these back and forths and questions and answers is also for the public to have a clearer understanding themselves, because certainly if we can understand it, then the public has half a chance to. As representatives of the public, we try to think of things from their perspective as well. With that, we've got the motion before us to adopt that resolution, recommending the levy to the city for approval to the county. If there's no further discussion, we do have to have a roll call. Mr. Judge, would you call the roll, please?
Member Groff?
Aye.
Member Strawn?
Aye.
Member Schroeder?
Aye.
Member Etten?
Aye.
President Rowe?
Aye. That motion passes unanimously, and that resolution is adopted. That concludes our business items this evening. Thank you, everyone. The only item left on the EDA agenda this evening is to adjourn. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Member Strawn, second by Member Schroeder. To adjourn, no discussion on a motion to adjourn. We do have to have a roll call. Mr. Judge, would you call the roll, please?
Member Groff?
Aye.
Member Strawn?
Aye.
Member Schroeder?
Aye.
Member Etten?
Aye.
President Rowe?
Aye. That motion passes unanimously, and we are adjourned at about 6:22 p.m. We'll take a few moments to transition to the City Council.